my next guest, whose talent is only outmatched by his heart. And that will be evidenced on the worldwide leader in sports, actually, ESPN's news magazine show E60, doing a feature on my next caller. This coming up on this Wednesday, April 29th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That says a lot about this guy, Ernie Johnson, here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Ernie?
Rich, I'm great. It's great to be on your show, man. Thank you.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on, Ernie. Before we get to the you of this conversation, let's get to the NBA part of this. Do you believe the Kevin Love arm socket situation deserves some sort of discipline for Kelly Olynyk?
You know, I don't think he did it on purpose. And again, here's the deal, and you know where I'm coming from when you do a show like this and you've got guys who have played the game. You know, I talked to Shaq and Kenny and Charles on this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you see lockups all the time, and none of them thought it was an intentional move by Kelly Olynyk. I didn't, you know, when you look at the play and you see, you know, Love puts his left arm on Olynyk's chest, they kind of get locked up. I didn't see Kelly make any kind of a drastic move or anything like that to try to jar him or anything like that. So, you know, things happen, and I'm going to put this in that category. I don't think it was an intentional play.
Do you believe J.R. Smith has a multiple game suspension coming his way from the commissioner's office?
Yes, I mean, I think, you know, Charles said on our show last night 10 games, and I say that's too much. I would think I wouldn't be surprised to see a 3-game suspension, but I don't think it's a 10. But I don't think there's any place for it. I thought that was totally out of line. And the thing that might be working against JR is his history, because 2 years ago he hit Jason Terry in a playoff game on that court on the other side of the floor, and then, you know, going way back 2006, he got a 10-game suspension when they had a big brawl at Madison Square Garden, Nuggets and the Knicks. So no, I think he'll get 3. That wouldn't surprise me. So, and it could be more than that. But,
sure.
But it's going to be more than 1 in my mind.
Ernie Johnson, Turner Sports, Emmy Award-winning host of Inside the NBA, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what is the long-lasting effects within the playoffs of what we saw on the parquet floor yesterday, Ernie, with the Cavs now being without Kevin Love for the foreseeable future and potentially J.R. Smith for an extended period against the Chicago Bulls team everybody expects them to see next? What did that mean for the larger picture in the Eastern Conference playoffs, in your estimation?
Well, I think it's, you know, that's a heavyweight bout in the conference semis, and obviously you want your team at full strength. I don't know how long Kevin Love will be out. I mean, you heard one report that it's going to be 2 weeks. I guess they were going to wait on the MRI today and then, you know, have a more accurate picture on that. But he's just coming off one of his best games as a Cavalier, you know, in the second game of that series. And so he's, you know, it's a huge loss. If he can't play and if J.R. Smith can't play, then you're going to, you know, you risk the possibility of falling behind in that series. You got the home court against Chicago. But if you lose a game on your floor and give away the home court right away, that Chicago team is looking as good as they've looked. And so, no, I think, you know, the ramifications are huge for Cleveland.
What about the Western Conference, Ernie? I mean, you take a look at the series between the Spurs and the Clippers. That reeks of a 7th game coming up on Saturday, but obviously there's more to come. And then you take a look at what's going on in the state of Texas. Mavericks extend, and Memphis looks very strong. They could close out Portland tonight as Golden State closed out New Orleans. How do you handicap the Western Conference playoffs based on what you've seen so far?
Well, obviously the most compelling series has been the one you mentioned with the Clippers and Spurs. That's a real tough draw for a 3 seed to get the reigning champs, but they showed me something yesterday, that's for sure, after San Antonio blew them out. And I mean, Chris Paul has been a handful for them. He's gone for 30+ in the 2 games they've won, and they looked really strong and showed a lot of fortitude yesterday. So I still have a trouble going against San Antonio in that series. I see them winning one of those games in L.A. and winning at home. So I don't know if it's going to be Game 5 or it's going to be Game 7, but I gotta go with San Antonio. I don't think there's any team tougher mentally than they are. And no matter the situation, and that's why yesterday was a little surprising. They had a little 32-second stretch in there where they sent Chris Paul to the foul line and he hit 6 in a row and gave him a 5-point lead, and they never trailed after that. But overall, I just think they've been through so much that when it comes right down to it, they will find a way against the Clippers. Memphis has taken advantage of what Portland's doing, with the losses in the backcourt to Wes Matthews and follows back, but losing Wesley Matthews was really huge for Portland, and so I see Memphis. I don't know if they'll win that one tonight, but they'll certainly win back in their place, and they will present a real problem for Golden State because they will slow it down, make it a half-court game, and try to take away what Golden State does. But that'll be a great one. And as far as Houston and Dallas, the Rockets will win that series. Dallas didn't want to get swept on their home floor last night, and that's just become a shootout between those two teams. And I think the best shooter, not per se shooter, but the best scorer is James Harden, and Houston will win that series.
Tell me about Popovich, Ernie. I've never met him. I just see what I see of him on TV, and obviously what his teams have done. You've no doubt been around him for a very long time. Tell me about Popovich. About what he's like, Ernie.
I think it's easy for the public to get a misconception about Pop. If all you go by is the between quarter interviews, you'd think that the man is reticent and will never discuss anything and always gives 3- and 4-word answers. And it's not the case at all. I mean, we all saw what he did last year when Craig Sager was going through his cancer treatments, and the guy's got a wonderful heart. And it's one of those things, like we were in San Antonio for the conference finals, and he just called me into his office one day, and we just sat there and talked for 15 minutes, and we didn't even have to talk basketball. He's a great human being and a wonderful coach. But folks can kind of get lost in some of the stuff that they just see on TV. But he's no, they don't come any better than Pop.
Yeah, I mean, because at this point, I just feel, for everybody's sake, let's just leave him alone in between the third and fourth quarters just to ask, right? I mean, can we just all stipulate that they have to play better or the pace needs to be better? You know what I mean? Like, can we just stipulate at this point instead of going through those machinations?
It puts such immense pressure on the sideline reporters to come up with something that he really feels compelled to respond to. And so in itself, it's just kind of a nice little comic relief in the heat of a playoff battle. So I'd like to see them continue, because one of these days he's going to really open up and say, that's a great question, and I'm blah blah blah. But I love watching, and I love watching him in postgame the other night too. He took 2 questions and just shook his head and said, "Let me just make a statement about the game," and that's all you needed. But he's one of a kind, and the league is lucky to have him. He's been spectacular.
Well, same to you too, Ernie. I mean, to be on Turner and then to have ESPN do a feature on you, again, speaks a lot to how well regarded you are in our industry, Ernie. And then obviously your story of you and your wife adopting several children, including one that after you adopted this boy from overseas was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. Can you just walk us through and the listeners through your philosophy with you and your wife and viewing life and parenthood, Ernie? I know that's a large, heavy question, but I'd love to throw that out to you.
Sure. I mean, and I'll begin by saying, our PR department came to me last year and said, "Hey, Jeremy Schaap and E60 would like to do a piece on you." I said, "No, come on, stop." And they said, "No, they really want to." And I was like, well. And my wife and I had to talk it over. I mean, we're fairly private folks, and I just thought, and we thought, look, if this is can be beneficial, if it opens somebody's eyes to adoption, we can, we'll tell our story, and the fact that it was Jeremy obviously was was a big thing. I've been a huge fan of his work and always enjoyed what he's done, and he has a wonderful heart, and so we agreed to do it, and basically, it's we started shooting it last year, and then kind of would shoot here and there, and Rich, our story, Cheryl and I have just had that kind of a heart for adoption after we had 2 kids biologically, and then Cheryl went to Romania and adopted Michael, and he couldn't, he was almost 3 years old. He'd never been outside, and he had been abandoned in a park at birth, and my wife had called me from Romania when she was there with this group who were looking to adopt, and said, I met this 3-year-old kid, and he can't speak, and he can't walk, but I just can't go through our lives wondering whatever happened to that kid in that orphanage in Romania. And we said, well, just bring him home. And then we adopted from Paraguay 2 years later, and then adopted a couple of girls out of foster care about 4 years ago, and they're now 13 and 15. And I think we've just always kind of, I guess our message to our oldest kids has always been just to look out for other folks and give other people, kids a chance who maybe people had given up on. And so that's been kind of our philosophy, and we're able to shed some light on that in the E60 piece. I'm humbled. We were both very humbled that Jeremy and that the folks at ESPN would want to do that, because it is rare for somebody from another network to do a story on somebody from a competitor, and so we're humbled and honored to be part of it.
Well, you're a rare breed, Ernie, to say the least. Thank you for calling in. I hope to get you back real soon. Will you be at the Emmys in a couple of Tuesdays? Are you planning on that?
Next is it? It's next week already.
It's a week from tomorrow.
I think so. Yeah, I'll be there, and we'll hang out. It'll be fun. It's always nice that night, even if you win, if you lose, whatever, just to see a bunch of folks that you don't get to see. You see them on TV, but you rarely get to interact and kind of just hang out and so that'll be the good part of that night that we're together.
Well, we'll see you next week then, Ernie. Thanks for calling in.
Rich, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. That's Ernie Johnson of Turner Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.